Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're focusing on a truly heartbreaking event, the killing of Iryna Zarutska in Charlotte, North Carolina, back in August 2025. And this wasn't just a local tragedy. It really put a spotlight on some major cracks in our systems: mental health care, criminal justice. Our goal today is to, well, unpack what happened to Iryna, look closely at those system failures, and then track the ripple effects, the policy changes that came so fast, leading up to this law known as Iryna's Law.
Exactly. And we've got quite a bit to draw on here. We have details about Iryna herself, the suspect's background, which is quite complex, the political reaction, which was, frankly, immediate and intense, and then the actual text of the law that followed.
Okay.
It's a law that tackled bail, but also significantly aimed to restart capital punishment in North Carolina.
Okay, let's start with Iryna Zarutska herself, just 23 years old. Her story, even before this, was about resilience, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Born in Kyiv, Ukraine, back in 2002, she was studying art and restoration at Synergy College.
And that background, her being from Ukraine, is key here.
It really is. She wasn't just visiting. She was a refugee. She fled the Russian invasion in 2022, came to the U.S. with her mother, her sister, and younger brother, seeking safety.
That's incredibly tough context.
Yeah.
And her father.
He had to stay behind in Ukraine because of martial law. Couldn't even attend her funeral, which is just heartbreaking to think about. But here, she was really trying to build a life. Learning English, taking college classes, working at a pizzeria.
And it was coming home from that pizzeria job when the attack happened. Friday, August 22nd, 2025. Late, around 9:50 p.m. on the Lynx Blue Line.
Right, the city's light rail. And the sources, they lay out a sequence that's pretty chilling, especially regarding security or the lack of it. Surveillance video showed the suspect, Carlos Brown Jr., had already been on that train for hours.
Hours? Doing what?
The reports say he was making unusual movements, kind of laughing to himself, just writing. And when Iryna Zarutska sat down near him, actually in front of him, he attacked her from behind with a foldable pocket knife, stabbed her 3 times.
Oh my.
Yeah. Other passengers tried to help, give aid, but she was pronounced dead right there on the train.
And the security aspect.
Yeah.
You mentioned a lack of it.
Well, here's the thing. There were transit officers on the train that night. But they were in the next car, 1 car ahead.
1 car ahead.
Yeah.
So close, but not close enough to prevent it.
Exactly. It points to, well, a real problem in how security was deployed, right? It was reactive, maybe, but not present in a way that could deter something like this. It gave this, I don't know, false sense of security, perhaps.
And then the suspect just walked off.
He exited the train about 2 minutes later. He was caught on the platform, but not before making this really disturbing statement that's reportedly in the affidavit. He apparently said, "I got that white girl."
That just adds another layer of horror.
Yeah.
Okay, so that shifts us to the suspect, to Carlos DeJuan Brown Jr., 34 years old. And he wasn't unknown to the system.
Not at all. He had a very long history with law enforcement in Mecklenburg County. We're talking 14 arrests going back to 2007.
Any serious convictions in there?
Oh, yes. Breaking and entering back in 2014. And then, more seriously, armed robbery and firearm possession. He was actually incarcerated for that from 2015 until September 2020.
So he served time and was released. But there's more to his story, isn't there? The mental health aspect.
Right, and this is where the criminal justice history and the mental health system failures just collide dramatically. After he was released, his mother reported he was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and his behavior, according to her, became increasingly violent.
She saw the warning signs then.
She absolutely did, and she tried to act on them. This is crucial. She actually sought to have him involuntarily committed for his safety and others.
But it didn't happen. Why not?
Because the standard for involuntary commitment in North Carolina, like in many places, is really high. You basically have to prove someone is an immediate danger to themselves or others. And unless a court makes that specific finding, commitment is often denied. It's this constant tension, right? Protecting individual liberty versus ensuring public safety, especially when the support systems aren't there.
And were the support systems there? You mentioned capacity issues.
Exactly. That's the broader context.
Yeah.
North Carolina had significantly cut back its state psychiatric hospital beds in the early 2000s. The result. By 2024, the average wait time just to get into a psychiatric bed was 16 days.
16 days.
All right.
So even if his mother had somehow succeeded in court.
Right, where would he have gone? The system was already overloaded. There was basically this huge bottleneck. It almost felt designed to keep people out, not bring them in for help.
And things got worse.
Yes. Apparently, he stopped taking his medication. His mother eventually had to take him to a homeless shelter. And then came this final missed opportunity just months before Iryna's killing January 2025.
What happened then?
He started calling 911 repeatedly, making these bizarre claims like there was a man-made material inside him controlling his body, clear signs of psychosis, of serious distress.
So what did the authorities do?
They charged him with misuse of 911. It's a misdemeanor. But here's the kicker, the part that officials later pointed to as a critical failure. He was released with no bond.
No bond. Despite the 911 calls, the history, the mother's concerns.
Released without bond, back onto the street, completely unmonitored. Local officials, the DA, they later specifically highlighted this sequence, the failed commitment attempt, the system delays, this misdemeanor charge, followed by release without bond as proof of how badly the local systems had broken down.
Just a cascade of failures. So after the attack on Iryna, Brown was arrested. What were the immediate legal steps?
He was arrested, yes, and the court ordered him to undergo a 60-day psychological evaluation pretty quickly.
And the charges?
He's facing charges on two fronts. In state court, it's first-degree murder. But because the attack happened on public transit, he's also facing federal charges under a specific statute, 18 U.S.C. Section 1992. That law deals with terrorist attacks and violence against mass transportation systems.
So both state and federal cases proceeding, and he's being held?
Yes, held without bond currently, pending those trials.
Okay. Back in Charlotte, the city leadership, the mayor, Fall Isles, the council, they must have been under immense pressure about transit safety.
Oh, absolutely. The public confidence in the Lynx system took a huge hit. Understandably.
So how did CATS, the transit authority, respond?
They rolled out changes pretty fast, announced more security staff on the trains, on platforms, said they'd do more fare inspections, install new ticket validators, basically trying to show they were tightening things up, being more visible.
And the city council.
They also acted. They expanded the duties of a private security contractor they were already using. Now, those guards would also patrol sidewalks in areas right next to the transit centers. It was a clear attempt to, plug the gaps that this terrible event had exposed.
So local fixes were happening. But you mentioned earlier this story went far beyond Charlotte.
It really did. It got international attention almost instantly.
International.
Yes, coverage in Ukraine, naturally, given Iryna's background. And President Zelensky himself actually paid tribute to her at the UN General Assembly. That's significant. And then within the U.S., it just exploded politically.
How so? What was the focus?
It became a flashpoint, not just about mental health, but really about broader crime policies.
We should probably tread carefully here and just report what the sources say about different perspectives.
Absolutely. It's important to be impartial. Sources show that prominent figures on the right people, like former President Trump, Senator J.D. Vance, Elon Musk, they pointed to this case as evidence against, quote, soft-on-crime policies. They criticized cashless bail specifically and laid blame on local Democratic officials.
Any other specific examples?
Yes, the U.S. Transportation Secretary at the time, Sean Duffy, also weighed in, blaming Charlotte's city council leadership and the transit management directly. And former President Trump made some strong remarks just days after the killing, saying that dealing with horrible killings requires horrible actions.
So this intense national criticism, this political heat, it directly fueled action in the North Carolina state legislature.
It absolutely provided the momentum. Which brings us to this really significant piece of legislation, House Bill 307, quickly nicknamed Iryna's Law.
And the speed here was remarkable, wasn't it?
Unprecedented, really. Introduced, passed by the legislature, and signed into law by Governor Josh Stein on October 3rd, 2025. That's less than 6 weeks after Iryna was killed. For a bill making such big changes to criminal justice, that's incredibly fast.
Okay, so let's break down what Iryna's Law actually does. You mentioned it covers a few different areas.
Right. For you, the listener, it's useful to think about it in maybe 3 main buckets. First, bail reform. Second, mental health evaluation protocols. And third, a really significant push to revive capital punishment.
Let's take those first two, bail and mental health evaluations. They seem like direct responses to the Brown case, particularly his release in January 2025.
Exactly. The law specifically gets rid of cashless bail for certain serious offenses. That's the direct answer to Brown being released without bond earlier that year.
Okay.
And it goes further. It creates a new category of violent offenses where judges must impose specific conditions for pretrial release, things like GPS monitoring, again, trying to prevent someone like Brown from being released without any oversight.
Makes sense as a direct response. What about the mental health evaluation part?
This tackles the other failure point. The law sets up a much clearer mandatory process. It basically requires court officials in certain cases, based on the crime and the person's history, to order a mental health evaluation. No more maybe, it seems.
So, trying to ensure that people showing clear signs of distress actually get assessed by experts before any release decisions are made.
That's the goal, to tighten that procedural gap, prevent people from falling through the cracks like Brown arguably did.
Okay, so those parts seem directly linked to the specifics of this case. But then there's the third bucket, capital punishment.
Yeah.
How does that fit in?
Well, this is where the politics get really interesting. It seems the legislature used the public outcry and the sense of urgency created by this tragedy and the mental health system failures to also push through changes related to the death penalty changes that had been stalled for years.
Stalled? Why?
North Carolina hadn't actually executed anyone since 2006 due to various legal challenges and issues around lethal injection protocols. This law seems designed to jumpstart the whole process.
How specifically does it try to do that?
Several ways. One, it sets deadlines. It requires that appeals in death penalty cases have to be heard by the end of 2027. That's a major acceleration.
Speeding things up.
Right. And two, crucially, it makes the fact that the victim was using public transportation at the time of the crime an aggravating factor. That means prosecutors can use that specific circumstance to argue for the death penalty. It directly connects transit safety to the ultimate punishment.
Wow. That's a very specific link.
It is. And finally, the law tries to get ahead of potential future roadblocks. It tells the Department of Adult Correction to find alternative methods of execution if lethal injection isn't available or gets ruled unconstitutional again.
So basically, ensuring the state can carry out executions one way or another.
That appears to be the intent, to remove the legal obstacles that had led to the de facto moratorium since 2006.
And wasn't there also something in the law about holding officials accountable? Like the magistrate who released Brown?
Yes, that's woven in too. The law gives the Chief Justice of the North Carolina Supreme Court new power to suspend magistrates. This came right after Republican lawmakers had been publicly calling for the removal of that specific magistrate who handled Brown's 9/11 misuse case earlier in 2025.
So it's accountability aimed downwards as well.
It seems so. It's like the law became this vehicle to address multiple long-standing frustrations at once: bail, the death penalty process, judicial oversight, all catalyzed by this one horrific event.
So pulling it all together, what's the lasting impact here, both for Iryna Zarutska's memory and for the systems involved?
Well, her death tragically exposed how failures in mental health care, like the difficulty getting someone committed, the lack of resources from past cuts can intersect with failures in the justice system, like handling repeat offenders, pretrial release decisions, her memories being kept alive, through vigils, memorials. She was buried here in the U.S. There are murals, even a song by the rapper DaBaby called Save Me, which shows how much it hit the community.
It's just such a confluence of systemic issues and profound personal tragedy.
It really is. And that brings us to a final thought. Iryna's law, it definitely tries to address the public safety concerns. It mandates evaluations, tightens bail, speeds up executions. It focuses heavily on the punitive side, on control. But it raises a critical question for you, the listener, to think about. The law directs resources towards punishment and oversight, right? But what about the other side of the equation? What specific, dedicated steps, what kind of funding is really needed to rebuild that mental health infrastructure, to tackle the root causes the lack of access, the lack of beds that the sources suggest were there long before the violence occurred? Is the focus on punishment enough? Or does the preventive side still need major attention? That's the tension this law leaves us with.
A really vital question to consider as we move forward. Thank you for walking us through this incredibly complex and important story. And thank you for joining us for this deep dive.